while every 22-year-old crypto bro on your feed is screaming at you to take a 4 a.m. ice bath. To unlock your potential, you're currently staring at a lukewarm cup of coffee, wondering if you can legally sue your own soul for emotional distress and believe it or not. That specific feeling of existential dread is actually your greatest financial asset. Imagine it is 11:43 p.m. on a Sunday. You are sitting at a makeshift desk, staring at a spreadsheet that means absolutely nothing to the grand universe. But your middle manager aggressively insisted it needs to be in his inbox by 8 a.m. Monday. The harsh blue light of the monitor is burning into your retinas, and right at that precise moment, your phone screen lights up. It is a video of a 22-year-old crypto bro named Braden, standing in front of a rented Lamborghini, screaming into a tiny microphone about how he made his first million by waking up at 4 a.m., taking ice baths, and aggressively out-networking everyone in the room. You look at your lukewarm glass of tap water, you look at your bank account, and suddenly, a profound, soul-crushing wave of absolute exhaustion washes over you. You feel like you have been playing by the rules of a rigged game since the day you were born. Society has been loudly drumming the exact same tired lie into your head since the 3rd grade. Just work hard, put yourself out there, network aggressively, and eventually, the universe will write you a massive check. They tell you that wealth is a simple, linear equation of grinding 80 hours a week and possessing the loud, charismatic talent to sell ice to an Eskimo. But sitting there, trying to force your brain to focus on a single, mind-numbing task while your introverted, hyperactive mind is simultaneously running personal financial stress simulations, drafting a passive-aggressive email, and analyzing the geopolitical implications of a documentary you watched 3 years ago. You do not feel like a future millionaire, you feel like a malfunctioning biological machine. And you have every right to be absolutely enraged about this, because your lack of a rented Lamborghini is not a symptom of your laziness, and your desperate desire to avoid networking mixers is not a lack of talent. It is a completely rational, highly evolved response to an economic system built exclusively to reward loud, obnoxious, single-minded narcissism, and that relentless societal pressure leads us directly to the most expensive, devastating bait-and switch in modern financial history. The alpha male finance gurus and Silicon Valley hustle brothers have handed you a completely fraudulent map. They have convinced you that your tendency to avoid the spotlight, to overthink every possible angle, and to juggle 10 completely unrelated internal thoughts at once means you lack the singular killer instinct required to build real wealth. I know this because I actually bought into their scam. I spent years trying to follow their advice. I tried to be the loud, single-tasking, aggressively networking hustler. I treated it as an experiment, operating under the working title How to Become a Millionaire, assuming my quiet, multi-tracking brain was a terminal liability that needed to be violently suppressed. It was a spectacular, poverty-inducing mistake, trying to force an introverted, parallel processing brain to operate like a loud, linear salesman is like trying to use a supercomputer to hammer a nail into a piece of wood. But sitting in the humiliating ashes of that extroverted failure is exactly when the grand illusion finally shattered for me. The problem is not that you have zero talent. The problem is that the entire modern concept of talent is a loud, extroverted scam, and you are trying to apply your massive, unseen cognitive leverage to a system designed for people with the attention span of a golden retriever. You need to stop looking at yourself as a quiet, defective employee who simply lacks the hustle gene. Starting tonight, you must fundamentally shift your entire worldview. You need to look at yourself as a cognitive arbitrager. You are no longer playing the standard societal game of Monopoly, where you roll the dice and loudly buy properties for everyone to see. You are playing a high-stakes, asymmetric game of algorithmic warfare in the absolute shadows, while the loud, ALLEGEDLY talented extroverts are standing in the middle of the street screaming through a megaphone to sell a single product. Burning all their energy on sheer visibility, you are sitting in the dark. You are running 12 simultaneous predictive models, quietly finding the exact inefficiencies in their loud, messy system. and siphoning the profits without anyone ever knowing your name. Because when you finally zoom out from the depressing, claustrophobic reality of your Sunday night spreadsheet and look at the grand, hidden architecture of modern wealth, you realize the entire global economy is essentially a giant, noisy casino perfectly rigged against the loudest players. To understand how you, the quiet multitasker, can bankrupt this casino with zero talent, we have to dissect the invisible machinery operating beneath the surface. It all starts with the absolute lie of the attention Ponzi scheme. The traditional economy tells you that visibility equals value. Extroverts operate entirely on this premise. They trade in the cheap, volatile currency of handshakes, stage time, and viral TikToks. But historically and economically, the visible players almost never hold the real wealth. The real money is always controlled by the invisible infrastructure that processes the data. The loud people leave behind, because you have an introverted brain that constantly multi-tracks. You are naturally wired to see the infrastructure, not the performance. While the extrovert focuses entirely on the single shiny object in the room, your brain is simultaneously analyzing the lighting, the exits, the mood of the crowd, and the structural integrity of the floorboards. But seeing the entire room is not enough, which leads us to the second massive failure of the extrovert economy, the myth of linear focus. They tell you that a millionaire focuses on one thing at a time. This is biological amateur hour. Your brain operates on the asymmetrical information theory. The reason you have 30 tabs open in your browser and your mind constantly jumps from philosophy to economics to pop culture is not because you are distracted. It is because your brain is a highly advanced pattern recognition engine, desperately trying to collide unrelated data points to create unique leverage. Every major financial breakthrough in history didn't come from a guy staring at one spreadsheet. It came from someone connecting a concept from biology to a problem in logistics. Your multitasking is not a bug. It is an incredibly aggressive, highly diversified intellectual portfolio. And this brings us to the ultimate biological metaphor that separates you from the hustle bros. Think of the loud, talented entrepreneur as a highly tuned, deafeningly loud Ferrari engine. They roar down the street, getting everyone to look at them. But they run entirely on a cheap fuel called dopamine. They require constant external validation to move forward, and because they run so hot, they inevitably burn out after a few miles. Your brain, however, is a deep-sea nuclear submarine. It does not make a sound. It does not ask for applause from the fish. It runs on a virtually inexhaustible, quiet neurochemical called acetylcholine, designed for deep, isolated, parallel processing under massive, crushing pressure. You can stay submerged in a complex problem for months, while running 5 secondary systems in the background, entirely undetected by the surface world. But running a nuclear submarine in the dark is not a painless existence. In fact, possessing the ability to outprocess the entire room while remaining completely invisible comes with a terrifying, devastating toll on your humanity. But here is the jagged, unpolished truth that the motivational speakers with the veneers will never tell you. Being a nuclear submarine in a world of jet skis is a recipe for a very specific, profound kind of suffering. Because when you finally accept your role as a cognitive arbitrager, you are essentially signing a contract for a life of intellectual isolation, to see the systems that others don't, to process the data they ignore, and to run 12 background simulations while they are still struggling to read the room, means you will eventually find yourself speaking a language that nobody else understands. You will stand in a circle of talented professionals, listening to them congratulate each other on mediocre ideas, and you will feel the cold, clinical detachment. You are the only one in the room who sees the structural collapse coming 3 months from now, but because you aren't the loudest voice, nobody is listening. This is the curse of the architect. You are building the future in your head, but you are forced to live in the present-day ruins designed by people who couldn't focus for more than 10 seconds at a time. And that cognitive gap creates a devastating biological debt. Every time you force yourself to emerge from the deep, quiet waters of your mind to perform the talent of the extrovert, the networking, the pitching, the forced enthusiasm, you are effectively raiding your own nuclear reactor. You are trading your high-grade, long-term focus for cheap, short-term social capital. The result is what I call the wealth builder's hangover. It's that moment after a big meeting or a social event where you find yourself sitting in your car, in total silence for 45 minutes, unable to even turn the ignition because your brain has been completely drained of its fuel. The world wants to convince you that this exhaustion is a sign you aren't cut out for the big leagues, but in reality, it is simply the cost of doing business in a currency you weren't meant to use. The dark truth is that to truly win as a zero-talent millionaire, you have to be willing to be the villain in everyone else's story. You have to be okay with being called cold, unreachable, or not a team player. You have to sacrifice the warm, fuzzy validation of the crowd to maintain the cold, hard efficiency of the machine. But knowing the price of the game is useless unless you have the actual, gritty mechanics to rig it in your favor. You don't need talent in the traditional sense. You need a weaponized system that turns your introverted multitasking into a financial meat grinder. You need a protocol that exploits the weaknesses of the loud world while protecting your internal nuclear core. The first step in this protocol is what I call the complexity mode. Most people seek out businesses that are simple or easy to understand. That is a trap designed for extroverts who want to spend all their time talking. You, however, must actively seek out the most boring, mind-numbingly complex, and data-dense niches imaginable, the dark corners of logistics, algorithmic arbitrage, or specialized intellectual property law. Why? Because the loud, charismatic people with talent have the attention span of gnats. They will never bother to learn the intricate, multi-layered systems that you find intuitive. By positioning yourself in a niche that requires parallel processing and deep-sea focus, you create a natural barrier to entry. You aren't competing on charisma. You are competing on the sheer volume of complexity you can swallow without blinking. You don't out-hustle them, you out-process them, because once you are inside the moat, you must implement the asynchronous shadow strike. Never, under any circumstances, try to compete in real time. Real time is the extrovert's playground. It's where they use their loud voices and fast talking to overwhelm you. Instead, you move your entire operations to the shadows of the asynchronous world. You communicate through long-form, data-driven memos that force people to slow down to your speed. You use automated systems, AI agents, and offshore teams as your front-facing talent. You become the invisible ghost in the machine. You build $1 million empire while wearing sweatpants and sitting in a dark room, because you have replaced the need for a physical presence with the presence of your superior systems. You are not networking. You are building a digital web that catches the profits, while you are busy running 3 other background simulations. But the final, most important cheat code in the protocol is the strategic disappearance. The greatest mistake the zero-talent millionaire makes is sticking around to be congratulated. The moment you start making real money, the loud world will try to pull you back in. They will want you on the podcasts. They will want you to give the keynote speech. If you say yes, you are dead. You will be pulled back into the dopamine economy, your acetylcholine will dry up, and a nuclear reactor will melt down. You must master the art of being the ghost millionaire. You take the profits, you reinvest them into your automated rackets, and you keep your mouth shut. You don't buy the Lamborghini to show it off. You buy the quietest, most secluded plot of land you can find and build a fortress where nobody can ever ask you to hop on a quick Zoom call ever again. Because when you finally reach this level of mastery, you realize the most profound secret of all. You didn't need talent. You didn't need to wake up at 4 a.m. to take an ice bath. You didn't need to lean in. You simply needed to stop trying to be a loud version of someone else and start being a quiet, high-frequency version of yourself. You are no longer the victim of the Sunday night spreadsheet. You are the one who owns the company that produced the spreadsheet. You have successfully navigated the Beitan switch, turned your perceived weaknesses into your greatest weapons, and built a shadow kingdom that the loud world doesn't even know exists. You have reached the final stage of the cognitive syndicate. You are free. You are wealthy. And most importantly, you are finally alone. But don't get too comfortable in that silence, because now that you've mastered the world outside your head and built your fortress, there is a new, much more terrifying shadow creeping across the floor. You've defeated the extroverts, you've outprocessed the system, and you've secured the bag. But you haven't yet faced the final boss, the internal saboteur, that voice in the back of your head that thrives on the very silence you just fought so hard to achieve. And trust me, that inner double agent has a plan to burn your entire empire down from the inside, and we are going to talk about exactly how to stop him next time.